The street was unusually quiet for that time of night, the kind of silence that settles in after the city has spent all its noise. A single streetlight flickered above Marcus Johnson as he stood near the bus stop, counting the wrinkled bills in his hand for the third time. $28. That was all he had left until payday, 3 days away. He exhaled slowly, rubbing his tired eyes. Another double shift completed, another night away from his son. Marcus was a black single father doing everything he could to keep life steady for 8-year-old Eli. During the day, he packed lunches, checked homework, and tied shoelaces. At night, he cleaned office floors that never seemed to stay clean, scrubbing away other people's messes while quietly carrying his own worries home. Every dollar had a purpose: rent, electricity, school supplies. There was never room for mistakes. Never room for mercy. He slipped the money back into his wallet and started the long walk toward home. His phone buzzed. A reminder. Rent due tomorrow. Marcus swallowed hard and quickened his pace. That's when he noticed her. She was sitting on the curb outside a rundown roadside motel, the kind people avoided unless they had no other choice. She couldn't have been more than 18. Her clothes were thin, her shoes worn, and her arms wrapped tightly around herself as if trying to hold the world together. Marcus slowed, telling himself not to stare, not to get involved. He had his own problems. His own child. Then she looked up. Her voice was barely louder than the hum of traffic. "Sir, I'm sorry. Do you know anywhere cheap I can stay tonight?" Marcus stopped walking. In her eyes, he didn't see desperation alone. He saw exhaustion, the kind that comes from running out of hope. His mind raced. "I can't afford this. I shouldn't stop. Someone else will help." But the street was empty. The motel sign buzzed overhead. And for a moment, Marcus saw Eli in her face, not as he was now, but as he might be one day, alone and afraid in a world that didn't care. Marcus looked at his wallet again. $28. He felt a sharp ache in his chest as he turned toward the motel office. The clerk barely looked up as Marcus slid the bills across the counter. "One night," he said quietly. The key was handed over without ceremony. Marcus walked back outside and held the key out to the girl. Her hands trembled as she took it. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'll pay you back, I promise." Marcus shook his head. "Just stay warm tonight," he said, forcing a small smile. "That's enough." As he walked away, fear followed him like a shadow. He didn't know how he'd explain this to himself, or to his son. But behind him, the motel door closed softly. And for the first time that night, someone slept safely. Marcus's apartment was dark when he finally pushed the door open. He didn't bother turning on the lights. The silence felt heavy, like it was waiting to judge him. He set his keys on the small table by the door and leaned against the wall, closing his eyes. $28. Gone. He could still feel the weight of the motel key in his palm, even though it was no longer there. He walked into the kitchen and opened the fridge. A half-gallon of milk. Leftover rice in a plastic container. He shut the door gently, as if loud sounds might make reality worse. Rent was due in less than 12 hours. The electricity bill was already past warning. And tomorrow morning, Eli would ask what was for breakfast. Marcus sank onto the edge of the couch and rubbed his hands over his face. "What were you thinking?" he muttered. His voice cracked in the empty room. He had promised himself long ago that he would never put his son at risk again. After Eli's mother passed, Marcus had sworn that no matter how hard life became, his child would always come first. And yet, he saw her eyes again. Not begging, not demanding, just tired. The kind of tired that comes from being invisible for too long. Marcus lay back on the couch, staring at the ceiling where a faint water stain spread like a map of places he'd never go. His mind replayed the moment over and over, his wallet opening, the bills sliding across the counter. Fear twisted in his stomach. What if the landlord didn't understand? What if the lights went out? What if kindness cost him everything? He rolled onto his side and pulled his jacket closer, even though the room wasn't cold. Somewhere down the hall, a neighbor's television murmured softly. Life going on. Unaware, Marcus thought about Eli sleeping in the next room, curled up with his stuffed dinosaur, trusting his father completely. That trust pressed heavier than any bill. "I'm sorry, son," Marcus whispered into the dark. He didn't know if he was apologizing for risking their stability, or for a world that forced choices like this. Sleep didn't come easily. When it did, it was shallow and restless. The alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m. Marcus sat up slowly, his body aching. For a moment, panic returned full force. Then he remembered something else, the way the girl's shoulders had relaxed when she took the key. The way relief had washed over her face, just for one night. He stood, washed his face, and made 2 slices of toast for Eli, scraping the last bit of jam across the bread. When his son smiled sleepily and said, "Thanks, Dad," something inside Marcus steadied. On the bus to work, Marcus stared out the window at the waking city. He didn't feel heroic, he felt scared, but beneath the fear was a quiet certainty he couldn't explain. He might lose money, he might face consequences, but somewhere, deep inside, Marcus knew this. For one night, he had chosen compassion over fear. And that choice, painful as it was, had already changed him. By mid-morning, the office felt different. Not louder, tenser. Conversations dropped to whispers, and even the printers seemed to hum more carefully. Marcus noticed it the moment he stepped off the service elevator with his cleaning cart. People straightened their backs when managers walked by. Doors closed faster than usual. Something was coming. He pushed his mop down the long, polished hallway, the lemon scent of cleaner trailing behind him. Normally, this part of the job felt invisible. No one looked at him. No one asked his name. Today, though, eyes flicked toward the elevators again and again. "Did you hear?" 2 assistants whispered near the coffee machine. "She's arriving early." No warning at all. Marcus didn't ask questions. He never did. Curiosity didn't pay the bills. He focused on the floor, on the rhythm of work that kept his mind steady. Still, a knot formed in his chest. Big changes usually meant layoffs. Budget cuts. Fewer hours. The elevator chimed. The sound sliced through the hallway, sharp and final. Every conversation stopped. Marcus paused mid-step, his mop hovering just above the tile. The doors slid open slowly. A woman stepped out. She was young, maybe late 20s, dressed in a charcoal gray suit that fit perfectly, her posture straight, her expression calm and assured. Her shoes clicked softly against the floor as she walked forward, flanked by 2 executives who suddenly seemed unsure of themselves. Marcus lifted his head, and froze. He recognized her immediately. The eyes were the same. Clear, steady, and unforgettable. The girl from the motel. Only now, her hair was neatly styled, her face rested, her shoulders squared with confidence. For a second, the hallway seemed to tilt. Marcus gripped the handle of his mop, his heart pounding so loudly he was sure others could hear. No, that's not possible. She scanned the hallway, then her gaze landed on him. Time slowed. Recognition flashed across her face. Not shock, not confusion, but something gentler. Gratitude. A small, knowing smile touched her lips. Just enough for him to see. Just enough for him to doubt his own eyes. She turned to the gathered staff and spoke, her voice steady and warm. "Good morning. I'm Ava Reynolds. Thank you all for being here." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "Reynolds," someone whispered, "as in the new CEO." Marcus felt his knees weaken. CEO. Boss. The word echoed in his head as Ava continued speaking about vision, growth, and values. Her words blurred together, drowned out by the rush of blood in his ears. He remembered her sitting on the curb, hugging herself against the cold. Remembered the motel key shaking in her hand. This woman, this powerful presence, was the same person. As the group began to move toward the conference room, Ava paused. She turned back toward Marcus, meeting his eyes fully now. For a brief moment, the world narrowed to just the 2 of them. "Good morning," she said softly, as if they were the only ones there. Marcus swallowed. "Good morning, ma'am," he replied automatically, lowering his gaze out of habit, out of years of knowing his place. She nodded once, respectfully, then followed the others down the hall. Marcus stood there long after they were gone, mop still in hand, his reflection warped in the glossy floor. His heart raced, not with fear this time, but disbelief. He had given kindness to a stranger. And now, that stranger stood above him. Whatever this day held, Marcus knew one thing for certain. His life was about to change. The conference room felt too quiet when Marcus stepped inside. The long glass table reflected the ceiling lights, sharp and unforgiving. He stood near the door, unsure where to place his hands, his work uniform suddenly feeling smaller than it had that morning. Across the room, Ava Reynolds sat alone, her jacket folded neatly beside her. Without the crowd, without the title, she looked human again. "Please, sit," she said gently, gesturing to a chair. Marcus hesitated before lowering himself into it, his back straight, his eyes fixed on the table. His mind raced through worst-case scenarios. Did I break some rule? Am I in trouble? He had spent his life learning how to stay unnoticed. Being summoned was never a good sign. Ava studied him for a moment, then spoke. "I want to start by saying thank you." Marcus blinked, confused. "Ma'am, for last night," she continued. Her voice softened. "For seeing me when you didn't have to." He finally looked up. Her eyes held no authority now, only sincerity. Marcus swallowed. "I just did what anyone should," he said quietly, though they both knew that wasn't true. Ava leaned back slightly, folding her hands. "Most people walk past. I don't blame them. Life teaches us to protect ourselves." She took a slow breath. "I wasn't homeless in the way people think. I had money, influence, a name." A sad smile crossed her face. "But I was hiding." She told him about her past. Growing up in foster homes, surviving abuse, learning early how easily power could be used to control or destroy. Success, she explained, became her armor. She built her company not just to win, but to never be powerless again. "Yesterday," she said, "I needed to know if kindness still existed without a price tag." Marcus listened, his chest tightening with every word. He thought of his own scars, different, but familiar in weight. Loss, responsibility, survival. "I sat there all night," Ava continued, her voice trembling just slightly, "thinking about you walking away. You didn't ask my name. You didn't expect anything back. You just gave." She met his gaze. "That reminded me of who I was before fear hardened me." Silence filled the room, heavy, but honest. Marcus shifted in his chair. "I was scared," he admitted. "I've got a son, 8 years old. I don't have much room for mistakes." Ava nodded slowly. "That's what made it matter more." She leaned forward. "You chose compassion knowing the risk. That kind of choice, it changes people." She slid a folder across the table. Marcus didn't open it. "I'm not here to reward you," Ava said quickly, sensing his hesitation. "I'm here because leaders shouldn't forget what it feels like to be vulnerable. And because this company should reflect the values it claims to have." Marcus felt his throat tighten. For the first time in years, someone wasn't looking past him, or above him, but directly at him. Ava stood. "Last night, you reminded me that success means nothing if it costs your humanity." Marcus rose as well, unsure what to say. Gratitude, disbelief, and something close to hope tangled inside him. As he left the room, he realized the truth wasn't just hers to tell. Kindness doesn't ask who deserves it. It asks who needs it. And yesterday, they both did. Marcus walked back into the hallway slowly, as if his body hadn't yet caught up with what his heart was feeling. The office looked the same desks, the same quiet footsteps, the same hum of machines, but something inside him had shifted. He no longer felt invisible. He felt seen. Behind the conference room door, Ava remained standing for a moment after Marcus left. She stared at the empty chair across from her, remembering the way his voice trembled when he spoke about his son. Power had given her control over buildings, budgets, and futures, but kindness had reminded her why any of it mattered. Later that afternoon, an email went out to the entire company. A new initiative, a new direction. It spoke about dignity, about second chances, about building a workplace that didn't just reward performance but character. Most employees skimmed it quickly, unaware that the words were born from a single night and a single decision. Marcus was restocking supplies when his supervisor approached, unusually nervous. "Marcus," he said, clearing his throat, "there's been a change." Effective immediately, Marcus braced himself. "You're being promoted." The word didn't land right away. Promoted meant steady hours, benefits, time with Eli. His knees nearly gave out as the supervisor continued. training opportunities, flexible shifts, and support for employees with families. Marcus nodded, tears blurring his vision, afraid that if he spoke, he might break. That evening, Marcus walked home lighter than he had in years. He stopped at the grocery store and filled his basket without counting every item twice. At home, Eli ran to him, arms wide. "Dad, you're early." Marcus knelt and hugged his son tightly. "Yeah, buddy," he whispered. "I am." Days later, a letter arrived, an education fund for Eli, no conditions attached. Marcus sat at the kitchen table holding the envelope, his hands shaking. He didn't cry right away. He breathed, deeply, fully. For the first time in a long while, the future didn't feel like a threat. Across the city, Ava stood at her office window, watching the lights come on as night fell. She thought about the motel sign buzzing in the dark. About a man who gave when he had nothing extra. That night had stripped away her defenses and reminded her that strength wasn't about titles, it was about choices. One act of kindness had traveled further than either of them could have imagined. Because compassion doesn't end where it's given. It echoes, it grows, and sometimes, it returns as hope, wrapped in the quiet certainty that even in a hard world, humanity still wins. And all it takes, is one brave, selfless choice.